Okay, Best Picture, 1917. Now, the clear front runner at minus 250. Then you have Parasite at 3.5 to 1. You have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at 8 to 1. You have Joker at 12 to 1. You have The Irishman at 50 to 1. You have Jojo Rabbit at 66 to 1. Little Women, 100 to 1. Marriage Story, 100 to 1. And then Ford v. Ferrari at 250 to 1. And Colin, I'll kick it to you first because it's somewhat of a wide open race. What are you kind of feeling like here?
And I think it's not only just a wide open race. You have to think about what the voting process is, right? Like, so they rank. They just don't send in like, this is my winner. Here you go. This is my vote. They rank them 1 through whatever. And so you could have a movie that potentially gets enough votes to be considered for Best Picture in the process, but it could do a clean sweep of like second place and still win Best Picture. So I think that needs to be taken in consideration. So knowing that second place, a whole boatload of second place votes can get you Best Picture, this is considered the category where you pick the movie that you hate the least. As you know, let's talk about the biggest upsets in Best Picture history. 3 of the biggest upsets in Best Picture have come in the last 15 years. 2016 Moonlight over La La Land, 2015 Spotlight over The Revenant, and 2005 Crash over Brokeback. Moonlight is the only film in history to win Best Picture after being denied the honor by BAFTA, Writers Guild, SAG, American Cinema Editors, Directors Guild, and Producers Guild. And you know why? Because they got a bunch of second and third place votes on ballots and still had enough tally at the end to win the whole thing. I mean, that is an amazing stat to not pull Best Picture from any of those guilds and still win it at the Academy Awards. Only Annie Hall has ever won Best Picture with an average nomination score of minus 1.6. So let's talk about that again. Average nomination score. So take up all the Best Pictures in this category, what their average nomination is across the entire field, and then you can't win Best Picture if you have a negative 1.6. So if you look at that, the average nomination score for these pictures is 7.66. That knocks out every member in the field except 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Joker, and Irishman. Now we're going to throw Irishman out. It's a Netflix movie. 93% of Best Picture winners have had a Best Director nomination. 89% have had a Screenplay nom, and 82% have had a Best Editing nomination. Irishman, Joker, and Parasite got all 3 of those. While 1917 is going to win Director with Sam Mendes, we said, but they have no nomination for Best Editing, and that scares me a lot because that's one of the grand slams that you got to have. 1917 would be the first picture to win Best Picture without a nomination of Best Acting or Best Film Editing since 1934 when editing became a category. Films that looked like potential Best Picture frontrunners but were given snubbed for writing in the last few years ended up losing top Oscar, like Gravity, Revenant, Dunkirk. No film since Titanic has won Best Picture without a writing nomination. So it's a huge hurdle for Sam Mendes in 1917. I got 1917 at plus 250. I wouldn't buy it as a favorite at all right now, considering all of these statistics, especially with the editing portion of this. Hollywood was nominated for 3 of the Grand Slams, writing, directing, and acting, no editing. 1917 is very similar to The Revenant. Came on around late Christmas release. The Golden Globes picked it up as Best Picture. Oscar still went to Spotlight over Revenant. People are going to knock 1917 for no editing award and a lack of dialogue. People will knock Parasite for being a foreign film and a very low number of total nominees for Best Picture. While we may not vote for let me start over. While we may not vote for the best movie, which movie can generate enough top 3 votes, right? What is the movie that I least hate? And I think Hollywood is the one that's very capable of that. With an outside shot to Joker, I think some people are going to hate that. There's a reasonable argument that 1917 and Parasite are going to get left out. One's a foreign film. One doesn't have any editing. One doesn't have any acting. There's a good case for Joker and Hollywood can generate enough second and third place votes that they can win this thing. So my plan of attack is to just wait, let the numbers get inflated. And I absolutely think with the number of nominations that Hollywood and Joker has, they can generate the least hatred in the votes and actually win this thing.
Yeah, Colin, I think that's a very fair and compelling argument about Once Upon a Time and Joker having that universal appeal across, those 2 to 3 place votes. And I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if either of them won, but I will say that the rapid growth of the voting body, which we mentioned earlier, over the past 5 years specifically makes me think that this could be the year that a foreign film has a chance at Best Picture. You know, we talked about this earlier as well. Everyone thought that film would be Roma last year. But there was an additional hurdle, which was the fact that it was a Netflix film. And while I don't think that the Academy is necessarily fading Netflix films, I do think that they place a premium on the theater going experience. And while that might sound a little bit silly, I do think it could factor in here. As far as the growth of the voting body, following Oscars So White in 2015, they almost doubled their new members year over year, and since then have been growing at a similar rate. And the year after they initially did that, that was the year Moonlight won in an upset of La La Land, which at the time looked poised to win because it was a classic Oscar pick. Now, I don't exactly know how to account for Shape of Water and Green Book winning over the past couple of years, but I do know this. The Academy is getting increasingly unpredictable with that growth. And I do think there's a chance that this can go to Parasite, which is why I bet it at plus 450 to win last month. That's an implied probability of 18.2%. And like we've mentioned, this is a wide open race. So I still think that there's value on it at plus 350, which you can get at DraftKings. And I would bet it all the way down to plus 200. Like Colin, I did also take 1917 at plus money last month just because of the value, but I don't think I definitely wouldn't take it now that it's the favorite at minus 250.
Katie, I completely agree that the Academy is getting increasingly unpredictable, especially with this category. Like Colin mentioned, this is a category where we have seen several major upsets in the last few years. Everybody in the office is taking 1917, but I'm putting my money on Parasite. In my opinion, it's a near perfect film, and I agree that the theatrical release could play in its favor this year. There are some fantastic films in this category, but overall, I do think it's down to 1917 and Parasite. While, like Colin mentioned, they do have their, quote, flaws when it comes to predicting the winner, Parasite being a foreign film with subtitles, 1917's lack of editing and dialogue, though the continuous shot editing, like we mentioned earlier, worked for Birdman. I have heard rumors through some articles that the Academy is reporting about 20 voters have not even watched Parasite yet, which does worry me a little bit. And it's also very frustrating that the subtitles are getting in the way of some people viewing this. But I think that if the voters can get past the subtitles, Parasite will take it. I think the story in general, the acting, the way that they've kind of crafted this story and the direction, I think that it is definitely a Best Picture contender. And I'm hoping that with so many, quote, underdog films winning Best Picture over the years, that this will do the same.
I don't want to give this.
People need to read the subtitles. This is one of this movie about how this family of four gets into this rich family's good graces as four completely fictitious made up people making money, banking bank, and then finding out that somebody else has been a parasite off of the family. The dialogue is hot. There's none of that in 1917. This movie will make it will fly by. It is that good. Read the subtitles, people. Parasite is excellent.
And just for context on how worth it is, this has a 93% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I don't want to give that too much weight, but between the 93 audience and the 99 tomato meter, that's really says everything you need to know about how good this movie is and how much buzz is around it.
Oh, and like you look at this movie, and so Parasite is loved by audiences. Some people haven't watched it yet. That actually might benefit if they do watch it and vote, they like late in the process, that might be another benefit. But then you also look at, okay, the experts. A lot of these guys are in the industry. They do this every year. They make these predictions. They like Parasite about 29%, or, you would bet that down to about plus 250. That's the implied odds. Well, it's still at plus 350. So there's still about 100 cents of value here. It's a great value, great audience score. And I think, Colin, something you said earlier, when, how are you going to attack this? Are you going to go with the favorite, or are you going to try to look at some of the underdogs? And last year, I think, was a perfect example where, I actually wrote a piece for actionnetwork.com, and I'll be doing it again on kind of all these different awards. And I said for Best Picture, I think you got to fade Roma, which was the favorite. And you hedge by, you put some down on Green Book, and you have a little bit on Black Panther, because Black Panther was this huge underdog, but I think getting some love from the experts there, and the odds were just to where you could only put a couple dollars there, and you would kind of profit regardless, as long as Roma lost. So as long as the favorite lost. And I think this is kind of a similar situation where, there's still there's still a lot of value on Parasite. It's a good value, I think, down to plus 250. That might even increase in terms of, what you can bet that down to and still feel like you're getting better odds than the book is giving you. And then, you have Joker here, and, about 4% of experts like Joker. So that's only about plus 2,700 that really imply in terms of the implied odds. But at 12 to 1 even, you can just put a tiny bit down on that if you're fading 1917. And then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, about 11% of the experts like that one to win, and that's pretty much in line. So you have a lot of plus money underdogs here at pretty good odds, to where the best, most likely one to pull the upset, you're still getting major value on that in Parasite. And then you also have at least decent long shot odds to hedge Parasite with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Joker.
I mean, I think we all agree that there's only 4 movies that can win this category, right? 1917, Parasite, Once Upon a Time, and Joker. And 2 of those are at least 8 to 1 or better odds, right? And I mean, so I think that's my plan of attack. Is you want to give me 8 to 1 on one of the 4 films I think has a legit shot at winning this, I'll hit it. And, if you want to split it up into quarter units or whatever, if you're keeping track of how much money you're spending, I don't think 1917 is the favorite, even though it's my personal favorite. Like, the movie sent me on an emotional roller coaster, and after it, I felt more fulfilled walking out of a movie than I've seen in years. I don't think it's going to win. It's the editing aspect. It's just it's going to get picked on for the dialogue. Parasite fills all those holes, but people aren't watching because it's foreign film. I just think it's a great 4-horse race, and any one of them can pull it. And if you want to give me 8 to 1 odds on any of those horses, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, and I should point out that, mentioned again, that it's really, with these awards, the experts, whoever they kind of look at, are the ones that are in contention. They almost never whiff by picking someone to win that ends up, not. And we have only those 4, only 1917, Parasite, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Joker, the only ones that the Gold Derby experts are given any love to. And I think this is how you have to attack it. Same as last year. Fade the favorite and place wagers on the underdogs. And I think Parasite, I see what you're saying, Colin, with going with the long shots, but I think you can actually hedge this in such a way that, you're still getting value from Parasite, because according to the experts, this is the one where the books are kind of underrating it the most. So, the other 2 are kind of, they have longer odds, but essentially those odds are either in line or a little inflated, based on, if you kind of look at it from that perspective, from what the experts are thinking here. So I've kind of been following them for a few years, and I've nailed Moonlight, Green Book, and Shape of Water, and with the help of them. It's usually the second place a lot of time expert vote that ends up being the winner, and the favorite is overrated. And this year it's Parasite. So I think I love Parasite as my top bet. But yeah, I'm definitely hedging with Hollywood and Joker.
We have a Revo on the front of our shirts and Parasite on the back in this podcast.
Yes.
And I've been doing my hammer throw on my lawn, just like the movie Parasite. If you guys haven't seen Parasite, it's visually one of the most captivating things, to go from the slum to the penthouse, and this family doing a hammer throw on the lawn is I laughed off my couch. It was fantastic. Yes, we're hammer throwing with a Revo and Parasite.
Yeah, and Colin, you said 1917 was your favorite film. I mean, to me, it was Parasite. Like, I was actually more emotionally compelled by Parasite, and I saw both of them, I think, in one in day of each other. So I love both of them, but yeah, I actually like Parasite more. Like, that's how much I like Parasite.
But do you think the ending, like with 1917, comes to find out that if you're a Game of Thrones guy, it's Robb Stark is the brother we've been trying to find the whole time? Like, it's so fantastic from a Game of Thrones.
The brother, Robb Stark, is the brother of, oh my God, what's his name? The Baratheon brother, the youngest one. Tommen Baratheon and Robb Stark are brothers.
How is Tommen Baratheon? Joffrey was like trying to kill Robb Stark for years, and now Tommen and Robb Stark are brothers. No, I mean, like, from a movie standpoint, like, I walked out, I thought it was fantastic, but Parasite, I thought for 90% of the movie was done perfectly, and then the ending, it turns into Knives Out. I mean, there's so much blood going everywhere. Like the amount of murders at the end of it was way. I knew there was blood coming. I knew something bad was coming.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know everybody was going to get the shiv.
Yeah, hopefully.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gigi.
Hopefully, whoever is listening to this has already seen Parasite. Otherwise,
does it hurt?
I did not do my duty as a host by saying spoiler alert at the beginning. So one thing I'll say about Parasite and the ending, and we should actually talk a little bit about this before we get out of here, just for people who maybe haven't seen all of these movies, or at least all of the contenders. The ending for Parasite, I thought, was done extremely well. I thought that's part of the reason I did like the movie so much. I think, it was kind of, you didn't know what to expect in Parasite. It kind of led you through a few different paths. You didn't know if it was going to be one of these kind of sad dramas that just kind of unfolds without any real crazy action, or you didn't know if it was going to be, it was kind of a comedy at one point. It went through a lot of different emotional roller coasters. And then at the end, it just turns into this ridiculously, I thought, well shot, just kind of profound, bloody, gory scene. And one of the images that's kind of stuck in my head from all of these movies, this whole season, is the killer in Parasite when he walks out of that cellar and, he comes out right before he's in the yard and he steps into the yard and he's about to kill everyone. And it's just this, this kind of rich people party going on, and he's covered in blood and he's got a big, I think it was a machete or whatever, big knife. And like no one's even looking at him, and he almost looks shy, and he kind of like embarrassingly grins, and he doesn't just start killing right away. He just like looks around, like kind of like bashful, and he's got this huge smile on his face, and then he just goes and kills her. Right? So that to me, and then the rich couple kind of asking the kind of lower class father to take his own child to the hospital, to take the rich, their child to the hospital instead of his own child who's bleeding out on the floor. I thought that was just I thought it was so well done. I thought that's part of what made the movie cool. And then, of course, with his father then moving into the vacated killer's home. I thought it was great.
It's crazy. Like his wife's being stabbed by this maniac, and because the guy that pays you your paycheck smelled his fingers and smelled your nasty salt clothes smell, you went nuts and chopped him up. Like, why don't you take that aggression out on somebody that's stabbing your wife? The whole ending was a mess.
Well, no, but that's why I thought it was so cool, because you had that aspect of him killing the lower class guy, killing the richer guy the richer guy coming at him because of that. And then you also had him asking his okay, take my kid, and then you had take my kid instead of your kid, and then you had the other you had the main killer that's just killing because he's been even locked more downgraded than the lower class members. I mean, it was just kind of like this more. It's one of those things where you have to kind of, I feel read after it, what did I miss from this, and then it kind of becomes more profound. But Katie, what were you gonna say?
This is absolutely why I think this has a really good shot at actually winning Best Picture, because while it is a foreign language and international film, it has two threads that everybody can connect to. One, it's a great commentary on class, which no matter where you fall on the socioeconomic spectrum, I feel like something you can relate to in it. And the ending sticks with you forever. To your point, Raybon, after I saw it, all I did for the next week was read think pieces about it because I was trying to process it. It was insane. Although I will say that an ending that also stuck with me from this year was Once Upon a Time. It took a lot longer to get there than it did in Parasite, just because of the length of the movie. And obviously we were enjoying Brad Pitt driving a convertible around Southern California, which I'm never going to be mad about. Never going to be mad about that. However, that ending also shook me. You knew going into it was going to have ties to the Manson family, but I didn't know how it was going to manifest itself beyond Brad Pitt hanging out with these weird girls on the compound. And when you finally got to the ending of that movie, that one also really stuck with me. So,
yeah, to me, the end of Parasite to me did what Once Upon a Time wanted to. And I also think an interesting part about Parasite is this lower class family is crazy, and they are completely taking advantage of this upper class family, but it is written and performed in such a way that you feel for these people who are taking advantage of this other family. And I think it's really interesting the way that they kind of use the power dynamics and the class struggle to make you feel for each character in a different way. I think that's really hard to do. And like that last scene is so heartbreaking because you're so torn as to like what the right thing to do is. And there is no right thing in that situation. It's an insane situation that no one will ever hopefully be in. But the fact that you're sitting there as an audience member being like, what is he going to do? Is he going to go with this guy? Is he going to stay here? Like, what's going to happen? I think it's really fascinating.
And Caroline, I think that's a... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Colin.
I was going to say, that killer at the end stuck down in his bunker. That's like Colin Wilson college football Saturdays, you know? Like, I mean, like, he was getting a snack once every 6 days, you know? Like, this guy never came out. I don't think he bathed himself, you know? I mean, he's nuts. He was crazy.
And I should also point out that, you know, we're talking about kind of the big scene at the end, but there's a further ending in Parasite after that scene kind of dies down. And it's really kind of heartbreaking because you have, you know, so this guy, the middle class, I would say middle lower class, because there was, you know, the lower class, low class, the slum guy was the killer, the main killer. But, you know, his father moves in then, you know, and so you have that he gets separated from his father, and kind of, you know, he says, hey, you know, I'm just going to get enough money to buy this house, and then you can come out of that cellar. And then he kind of pivots to like him just back in the slums, and kind of like shoots it down as like, you know, probably never happens. It's just a fantasy. It's just a dream of his. So it was like a really heartbreaking ending. And Caroline, I thought you made a good point of it kind of was an ending, and it kind of made you think in the way that I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was trying to get there. And it was really, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was really creative, but I actually want to get your guys' opinion on this. Like, not everyone, you know, may have known exactly what the Manson, you know, story was, or those killings, you know, of course, ended with a young girl being, you know, killed by the Manson family. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood kind of sets up on that path. You know, Margot Robbie and her friends are in the house, and you're kind of seeing, you know, her in different scenes, and you're feeling kind of tense because you're worried about, oh my God, it's going to unfold that way. And then what ultimately ends up happening is a fairy tale kind of like storybook ending where, you know, Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio's characters end up intercepting the Manson family and killing them before they can get to killing anyone else. So, but if you don't know that, or you're just not as familiar with that Manson story, do you think it detracts from the film? Anyway.
I personally, with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I felt like it was two different stories trying to be told. I didn't like the way that Tarantino executed it, because to me, I would have rather have seen the story of old Hollywood or the story of the Mansons. I'm not as interested in the like make-believe that they did at the end, because I don't think they really earned it. It felt to me like a kind of disjointed story leading up to it. And so I was really personally frustrated by the end of it, because while I thought it was an interesting take to kind of change history the way he did, I didn't feel like he focused enough on one versus the other to warrant that ending. I would have rather have seen more about the Mansons and then the ending that they had, or more about Sharon Tate and kind of the, you know, neighbor relations that they had, and then that ending. I just didn't feel like it worked for the story that they told for, you know, 2.5 hours prior to the last 30 minutes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a really good point, that if Tarantino had, instead of kind of showing these two alternate stories and ending up with this, was it over 3 hour film, essentially, like if he had just kind of showed the audience, maybe he could have done it in any number of creative ways, whether it was, you know, showing it on screen or just kind of showing newspaper headlines and just more details about what happened to Sharon Tate, Margot Robbie's character, and how she was murdered, so that you had the audience kind of fearing that the entire movie. Then I think the movie is a lot better. But the fact that, like, you know, you can watch that movie having not much knowledge about the Sharon Tate murder, you don't really know what the hell's going on. And you don't necessarily know the significance behind the interactions in the movie with Brad Pitt and the Manson family. So I do agree that took away from it. And that's kind of why, you know, I know, Katie, you disagree, but that's kind of why I don't really see Tarantino as a big, you know, threat in the best director category.
Yeah, my devil's advocate for that was definitely just like what would be the most logical way that they could recognize what I consider to be the top 3 movies and the top 3 contenders for these big categories. And that is definitely more of a sentimental play on the part of the Academy.
I want to ask Katie, like, do you think that, as a Tarantino fan, like, I did not put this movie above Kill Bill, Inglourious Bastards, Pulp Fiction. Like, it's not in my Tarantino library. Like, I would still pop in Reservoir Dogs like 5 times before I'd watch this again.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, which is why I was initially very confused at the start of award season why it was the favorite. It was the favorite as recently as last month when we first started mapping out this podcast. For Best Picture, I should specify.
Yeah, it's like I think the reason it was the favorite was because, as we've kind of alluded to throughout this podcast, a lot of the Guild Awards and just other big awards, the Golden Globes, BAFTAs, things like that, those award ceremonies all kind of happen in about a month span of time during award season, from January to the Oscars, on February 9th. So January to February, all these things are kind of taking place. And I think the Globes being at the front, they have a lot of weight when these odds first come out. And then people start seeing a lot more of the movies. And remember, again, the voters, the people actually voting on the Oscars, admittedly do not see every film. And sometimes they admittedly do not see every Best Picture nom. And so Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was extremely popular. It was a pretty big hit at the box office. And I think that was one that most people saw. It was one of the first ones I saw. And I did like it. I think I did put it up there in terms of Tarantino, but not ahead of Pulp Fiction or the Kill Bills. But I thought it was pretty good. But I think it was just kind of that's why it was the early favorite. And it didn't really have anything going against it. It had acting noms, it had screenplay noms, it had all of the kind of necessary precursors as far as being one that could be the second least hated. And I think that's still a strong possibility when you consider, again, you have Parasite, a hurdle in terms of international film. You have 1917, a hurdle in terms of acting and just being more of a technical film. And then you have Joker being a hurdle in terms of the element of it being kind of looked at as a superhero or supervillain movie, really, in this case. So Once Upon a Time doesn't really have hurdles in terms of, it's a Hollywood movie. It's got good acting. It's got everything you would expect. So, it could, I think, become that like second least hated, or that least hated film.